When it comes to men and pornography, society shouts, "It's bad, don't do it," but they never give any real solutions. Bruce Lengeman, author of the book To Kill a Lion, helps to free Christian men from the nagging grip of sexual lust through heart changes, not just behavior changes.
Hi, welcome to the show. We are Suzanne and Jim Cheesman, and we're with our friends Bruce and Ruthie Lengeman. They both wrote the book To Kill a Lion, and it's specifically transforming your life through sexual freedom. Bruce, Ruthie, welcome to the show. We're so glad that we're going to be able to do these.
Yes, we're glad to be here.
Great. We're excited because while the book focuses on sexual freedom, these shows, we're going to be talking about a lot of different topics. I mean, a lot of marriage stuff, a lot of just relational things. And we think that it's good that it's the four of us. We're going to do this in combinations of sometimes Ruthie and just me, sometimes Bruce and Jim. But today, starting off kind of the inaugural show, we're starting off as a team heading forward to this. And I guess a good way to come out of the chute, first of all, is what inspired you to write the book?
Suzanne, what or who inspired me?
Okay.
Ruthie, I say this facetiously, she badgered me to write the book.
I know the feeling of being badgered.
And
what's best. Right.
That's right. She knew that, and I would say to write about sexual purity is like trying to empty the ocean with a bucket. It's such a broad subject. But I am so glad. I thank her many, many times that she was persistent with me, because the message has just has helped so many guys and so many men. And like I say, not my book, the message that God wants to send to men. And it was a message. What inspired me was my own personal journey, where God showed me something. I was a full-time counselor. And everybody who came to the counseling agency, every man that had the sexual problem, they were assigned to me. And I would tell them what I did, fear God more, meditate on scriptures, don't go any place where there's any temptations. In fact, go down to the local farm and home store and buy some horse blinders so you don't see anything. And that... I was having zero results, and until I was confronted by a counselor that told me I had a sexual problem. And
you weren't doing anything, Bruce, right? You weren't. I mean, you were following your own advice. You had the blinders on and all of that.
I sure did.
Could you be doing something wrong?
Well, that is probably the question of the ages. That I didn't do the pornography. I say I didn't do the movies, the magazines, the mental images. I didn't do any of it. I walked the line and basically had a very high self-esteem in that area, knowing that I didn't do that. But there were things breaking down. This counselor, who was actually a sexual therapist, he came to a conference that we had with counselors. And I heard him talk about something that I'd never heard. And he said that you cannot defeat sexual addiction by fighting sex. He said you have to go into the control room of the heart and find out what's driving the drive. And I called him into my office after the meeting, and I told him I'm having zero results. Well, like a good counselor, he said, well, let's talk about your sexual life. And I told him, I don't do this, I don't do that, I don't do everything. And then I stepped back so he could fall down and worship me. He didn't. He said this. He said two things. I perceive you have a sexual problem. And number two, he said, and I perceive that you are a master suppressor. And he knew.
Wow.
He knew, by talking to me for 10 minutes, that all I was doing was stuffing all my sexual desire down inside. And if I can summarize the lesson that I learned that drove me, motivated me to write the book, is that through the journey, I went to him for counseling. And that's a whole story in itself. But the key was I went from being not free to,
right.
which meant I wanted to. Oh, did I want to? I just wasn't allowed to.
Right.
From not free to free not to. And
Oh,
free
wow.
not to mean that I didn't become less sexual.
Right.
It's just that I found that my freedom to not do it wasn't like constantly trying to crawl out of a hole. It was I was able to approach it from a standpoint of victory and grace and God's power to the place where I did not want to do what displeased God. And that has been the journey that we've tried to pass on to many men.
You know, I mean, you take this from a spiritual approach, and no matter what kind of counselor you're going to, pretty much all of them are talking about the original way that you're going about them versus don't look, avoid temptation. You know, you've turned this completely on its head, saying you need to find what's going on in your heart first. You can't manage behavior until you deal with your heart issues, right?
Well, sort of. It was still good. Even though I wasn't free inside of me, I didn't understand my sexuality. But it was still good that I didn't do those things.
Right.
But because doing those things violates people, you violate yourself, you violate God. And so, yes, it was good that I didn't. But to come out the other end and find that all I was doing was putting a Band-Aid on the problem with my horse blinders and what's that? What's that?
Keep going.
Yes. All I was doing is putting a Band-Aid on the problem instead of going to the heart issue. And it did affect Ruthie. Ruthie was an integral part of this because she was very confused because she looked at my UTEL.
Okay. What I went through was I watched Bruce not look at magazines, not look at girls, not look at billboards, not watch any movies, not hide from me that maybe he was doing something. And he wasn't doing any of that. Yet I felt so inadequate and like I didn't measure up. And I had no idea what was going on because I watched him live every day. Yet it was like he was watching it because of how I felt.
I'm not really understanding how, like, you know, there are times that I wake up in the middle of the night and he's on his iPad and I open one eye just to make sure, see what he's looking at, you know, but I don't catch him. I don't catch him doing that, but I don't feel inadequate. What was the disconnect between him having the right behaviors, but you not feeling like you were enough?
Women are extremely sensitive, even if it's just the emotions inside. And I didn't know at that time that Bruce was suppressing anything, but my spirit picked up to him that something was not right. Something wasn't free. And as we would talk about different things, he didn't let on anything because he didn't know. But somehow I think women pick up things that they don't know what to do with because there's no outward signs.
But there was also the dynamics in our bedroom. That lust that I had suppressed was actually coming out in our sexual life, and not in extreme ways.
Right.
But it was affecting her to the place where she didn't understand, I didn't understand, and she felt like she had to be a good girl and go along. But it was just coming out in that way. And plus, at the same time, two national leaders, won't mention their name, but you tell about that.
Two national leaders that were just so good, and everyone listened to them. At one time, one fell, and then a little bit later, another one fell. And inside me, I thought, we all love these speakers. And we thought they were great. Their message was great. And so when they fell, I went through a deep, fearful response that if they can do it, why won't Bruce do it? And that was a very heavy time for me. And even when I talked to him about it, he said, no, I won't. But because I wasn't free inside in that whole area, I couldn't decipher why they can do it and he wouldn't. So that was a very complicated time for me.
Jim, can you understand the idea of knowing that if you even play in that gray area, you're subjecting yourself to losing control? I mean,
There's no question. I have been blessed. I have many, many faults. I commit a lot of sins every day. I One of the things is I don't have a pornography addiction or anything like that, but I do encounter it sometimes, and I know I'm a lustful person. I mean, I do fight that. I don't wolf whistle people or those kinds of things, but yeah, and I can see that when left to your own devices without submitting to Christ and to God and asking for help, it's a tightrope you're walking on, and it's you're probably able to get over to the other side, but there's a good possibility you're also going to fall off, and it's just a matter of you have to have somebody up there holding you as you go across. One of the things that you mentioned a little bit earlier, Bruce, you talk about you were doing all the right things. You were really, I mean, it's almost like with salvation, works don't get it done. It's having that relationship with Christ, and it seems like the same thing. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Because this whole journey didn't only change my life in the sexual arena; it changed the whole way I related to Christ. It was amazing, because what happened was with the not free to, there's such a legalism that happens.
mhm.
Yep.
There's I can't do this and I can't watch that. Accidentally saw that. I looked at that girl's legs too long or something like that. And then there's this constant like feeling guilty and repenting and all. And I realized that behavior modification is not in any department of our Christian walk the key thing. What we try to do is we try to modify our behavior, think that's going to change our heart, but it's reverse. God does want us to change our behavior, but it comes through the transformation of the heart. And so I say in my book, To Kill a Lion, it's transforming your life through sexual freedom, because the journey to being transformed sexually is also going to transform every other area of your life almost, because those roots that are causing you to crave lust are the same roots that are driving other things in your life.
You've still got a heart problem if you're just working on the,
if you're suppressing,
right.
if you're suppressing what's in your, if you suppress what's in your heart,
that's right.
I mean, that's what it is. I know one of the things you talk about in the book is how to be pure. You can be pure, but still be sexual. You don't have to swear off sex and become a eunuch or anything like that. You can actually still be a sexual person and still be pure. And I think a lot of people, kind of myself included, think that those are mutually exclusive things. If you're pure, then you're not sexual. If you're sexual, then you're dirty. You know what I mean? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, that is very key, Jim, to this whole topic. Is that this is not about becoming less sexual. It's actually I become very much more sexual, because my sexuality is focused in something that is satisfying, not just in the physical realm, but it's body, soul, and spirit. And so that changed everything when I realized that sexuality, your sexual drive, is about far more than hopping into the sack with a woman. Literally, your sexuality drives your creativity. It drives your ability to take risks. Your sexuality it enables you to be intimate with other people, to be intimate with your children, to be intimate with your wife in a non-sexual way. And it's driven by some of the neurotransmitters, like one big neurotransmitter would be dopamine. But you only have a limited supply of dopamine. And when you're spending in just all that dopamine in front of a computer screen trying to get highs, you really don't have the motivation for some of the other things that God wants to drive a man to be the pursuers, to drive a man to be the risk takers, to drive a man to be all man.
It sounds to me like when you talk about suppressing, that you were just kind of hanging on for dear life and you're using all your energy. That's all I've got. It's all I can do to just do the right thing and keep myself safe. And all your energy pie was used on suppressing so that your actions and behaviors were in line with your beliefs.
Yes. Are you thinking anything?
I'm thinking that when men suppress their sexuality, that's some of the things that a woman feels, because when he becomes sexual, it's compartmentalized. And a woman doesn't want a man to turn on and then turn off. And with that tightness before God causes him to turn off and turn on. And we had to really go through the blessing of Bruce being sexual, men being sexual, not only in his freedom, but like you said earlier, all the things that it allows him to be free in, where when he had to suppress his sexuality, it caused him to suppress a lot of other things too. And when I saw him get free, I felt more and more free to enjoy, to embrace his sexuality, and saw that men's and women's is so different, but God made it that way. And so I started loving that part of his life because I felt loved freely by him in that area, but in lots of other areas. It set him free and it set us free.
Well, I think we got to kind of start wrapping up this first show, but this was to be an overall message about what the book is about. What would you want a reader to take away from this?
Well, the thing that I would want a reader to take away is that the journey to transformation of your life, the spiritual walk, is getting down into the root of your heart and being transformed. Like, for example, the things that drive pornography, just some of the things that drive lust would be woundedness. Many people, multitudes of people, they don't swear, they don't cheat, they don't steal, but yet they carry around their wounds. God wants to free us. Even Isaiah 61 that says, beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise. That's what he came to do. It's reiterated in the book of Luke. So what I would want to leave with men is there is like a delightful transformation. And I will say this, and I want men to hear this, and that is, I never even dreamed that there would be a place that I could come to where I could be free from those chains of lust.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think it existed, but I found out it does exist. And it says, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. And it has not put me into a place of legalism. It is a place where I say, thank God, because I don't want the devil's junk anymore.
How many years ago was this, Bruce?
I wrote the book in 2010. I probably spent the whole process of writing it. It actually, the counseling part happened back in my 30s. And then there was many years where I was teaching it, and I was helping other men, and I incorporated it into my counseling. But putting that all together into the book was 2010. But I was in my 30s when the process actually happened.
Okay. So it's probably been, a couple of decades of you being free of this.
That's right. Absolutely. Yep.
Right.
Well, we've got to wrap this one up. We've got lots more shows we're going to do. I want to encourage you, if you are viewing this and you think, you know what, I've tried everything. I know that my son has issues and, he's been to counseling. You may not have tried this angle of transforming your life through sexual freedom. It's a heart issue, not necessarily a behavior issue first. So, Bruce, where can people purchase this book and find out more information?
Well, like most people buy books on Amazon, you can get it on Amazon. You can get it on Christian book distributors. There's a whole list of distributors that have the book. But I would say mostly Serta Publishing. They're the publishers, just wonderful publishers. You can get them directly from Serta.
CERTA, yep.
CERTA, that's right, CERTA. But for the most part, you can get it pretty quick at Amazon.
And if somebody has a desire to just kind of talk to you or Ruthie one-on-one, are you open to something like that?
We get requests for counseling because we do marriage, we do inner healing, plus we oversee 2 churches. And so it's probably something right now that we're not putting out there but yet we would certainly pray that whomever out there needs this help, that God would lead them to the people that can walk them through their journey. Plus, along with that, and this is important to mention, I have a workbook that they can work through this book with scripture. It's a pretty thick workbook that comes along with that. That's online too, To Kill a Lion workbook, and have a video series also on Vimeo, which goes beyond the book into that heart transformation.
That's awesome.
I'll tell you what, in the links below this on YouTube, and we will have links to everything that you're talking about, where all of the places you could purchase the book, where we can get the workbook, how they can learn more about you and Ruthie and the various ministries that you have and the types of things you're doing. I'm looking forward to the next, I don't know how many weeks we're going to be talking about this, but there's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot of interesting things that we can't, I've said before that I get to go through counseling with you guys here. I get to hear, because I can tell you, I did, until I started talking to you, Bruce, I thought I was pretty good. I didn't think I was, like when you were with your counselor you were talking to, you were ready to be complimented for how pure you thought you were, because you weren't acting things out. And, and the same thing with me. I have felt like, hey, I'm good. I'm behaving myself. So I've got a lot to learn, and I'm excited about the next, bunch of weeks here as we go through this book. And talk about how you can transform your life through sexual freedom.
Yeah. And I'm excited because Ruthie, we've talked about the fact that it's not just a guy problem. There's different levels. Age isn't really a factor. There is a lot to unpack. I guess want to just end on the fact that you are open to counseling and speaking opportunities and online classes too. So we'll put the links all, down for that as well.
All the contact information is there. So.
Yeah, that's the main place that we feel that we can influence, is doing the conferences, the seminars, and the group involvements.
Awesome. All right. Well, next show we're going to do on am I sinning? We're going to talk about sin, and is there a gray line? How do we know if we're disappointing God or if we're getting close to that? So
yes, thanks
for joining us today, and continue to be well. And we will be back with more shows down the road. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so very much.
Thanks for joining Bruce on the show, To Kill a Lion. Please feel free to visit tokillalion.com to purchase books, schedule Bruce to speak at your event, and find all kinds of resources. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a single episode.